This screencast is to show you how to complete the CA outline part of the culminating activity. So the first thing that you're going to do is locate the CA outline assignment in Schoology. It's going to be in the culminating activity assignment folder, and then it is called CA outline. So open up your document. It looks like this. Your first step is going to be to give your chapter a title. So remember, we are writing an informational chapter about Of Mice and Men and its relationship to the 1930s. So you should title your chapter something that has to do with either one of those two things or with both of those things. So for example, you could title it Of Mice and Men and the 1930s. There's a ton of different options for your title. Come up with something and put it in the spot next to title. In your outline that's already filled in for you in the red spots, these are the different requirements for your chapter to include. So these red pieces of this outline were taken directly from the assignment page. So we're going to have an introduction. We're going to have to talk about the 1930s. We are going to have to talk about how the 1930s plays a role in the text. And then we'll talk about theme and the lasting impact of the text. So, our next step is to start filling in how are we going to break these big ideas into smaller, manageable chunks. So, what are some things that we're going to need to include in our introduction? I think that it would be important for our readers to know a little bit about what book we're going to be writing about. So maybe we'll include a summary of the text. And along with that, maybe we'll talk about the author and when he published this book to kind of lead us into our historical context. And I don't think I need a third thing for my introduction, so I'm just going to backspace my C out of there and just have two pieces of my introduction. That is okay. So now I'm ready to move on to historical context. So I need to start thinking about the things in the 1930s that were happening that play a role in Of Mice and Men. So if you think all the way back to the very first day that we talked about Of Mice and Men, and you can go into Schoology to that day one folder that's still available to you, what are the things that are happening in the 1930s at the same time as Of Mice and Men being published? So we can actually go into that folder together and take a look at day one to kind of refresh us on what's happening. So if we scroll down, because this is all stuff we did in class, we don't need to review it all right now. And there's some slides linked at the very bottom. This is what we're looking for. So on slide 34 of those day one slides, we've got kind of a timeline of all the things that are happening around when this book was written. And what you can do is pull a few things out that you think are going to be important to include in your textbook chapter. So, for example, when Brother, Can You Spare a Dime, the song is written, that's not really important. We're not going to write a whole paragraph on that. But we're definitely going to be writing a whole paragraph on the Great Depression. So I can head over to my outline and add a title that says The Great Depression. And you're going to want to select at least two more ideas from this list about things that are happening in the 1930s. So maybe you pick the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and segregation. And again, we'll just delete the extra one. Now, in the C section, we're going to start thinking about how each of those things that we listed in historical context plays a role in the text. So, how does the Great Depression come up in the text? Well, we've got Lenny and George who are traveling looking for work. It's really important for them to find work. They've been trying to save up money to get this ranch, but it's taking them a long time because they don't get paid a lot. All those things are happening because it is the Great Depression. So we can talk about the importance and lack of money the characters have. And then what about the Dust Bowl? So George and Lenny are migrant workers traveling from place to place. The Dust Bowl made people have to travel from place to place, so we can kind of make connections between Lenny and George as farmers and migrant workers and talk about how those things come together in the text. And then segregation. We see that with crooks a lot in the text, especially in chapter 4. So we can talk about segregation and its impact on crooks. And delete that extra spot. And yours might look different. If you have different ideas to put in your outline, that is absolutely okay. It does not have to match mine exactly. Our next step is to start thinking about the theme. So you can use the theme from your thematic triad if you want to, or you can take a look at the themes provided to you in Schoology. There's 4 different themes for you to pick from. So if we go back over to that culminating activity folder, within that folder, there is a page that says suggested themes, and you can choose one of these themes to use in your chapter if you want. So if we choose this one, we might add that to our outline. So we might explain what the theme is, and I'm going to put my theme there that I picked as a reminder that that's the one I'm going to explain. And I need to explain how the setting impacts the theme, and maybe how the theme is still relevant. Although actually, I'm not going to include that one there. I'm going to move that down here to my lasting impact. So we'll talk about how the theme is still relevant today in that section. And then some other ideas that you might want to include would be why we still read the book. Maybe some cultural influences. So if you've seen any references to this book in like movies or songs or things like that, you could talk about that. You might talk about what you learned from reading this book and your own experience. Any of that would be fine for the conclusion. So once you've got all of your smaller ideas filled out and your outline is looking like this, there's one more step to this assignment. And that is to think about the different types of media that you want to include in your chapter. So when I say media, what I mean is pictures and videos and sound and GIFs even. So we're going to be creating a digital chapter. So you can use pretty much anything to help enhance your chapter. For example, I'm going to talk about the author in mind. I might choose to include a picture of the author. So, to add your brainstorms for your media, what you're going to do is put your cursor at the end of the row that you want to be before your media. Press enter, press tab, and then you can just put media, and I'm going to say picture. of the author. So I don't need to go out and find this picture right now. I am just saying that eventually that's what I want to put there. For the Great Depression, maybe I'll include a video. I want to make sure I label that as media. Video about the stock market crash. So you're just going to go through and add your different ideas for what media you're going to be including in your chapter within your outline. Once you have added all your ideas for your media, you've got all your small ideas listed out, you can go ahead and turn this in, and then you are ready to move on to the paragraph drafting stage.